Welcome to the Soft Rebellion podcast, a homecoming to the creative power of your female body. Our world uproots us from the gifts of the feminine, the intuitive, the instinctual, the cyclical, the soft. What's the result? Patriarchal cultures of perfectionism, shame, and disconnect that leave us constantly running, never arriving. Imagine a world of women softly rebelling, claiming our cyclicity, our weirdness, and our rest as we courageously cultivate a deep and delicious relationship to our female bodies. My name is Florina. I'm an osteopath, a dancer, writer, and coach. I've been on my own journey sparked by an eating disorder to come home to the wild, poetic anatomy of my female body and awaken my creative power. And I invite you to join me and my guests, trailblazing teachers, healers, and creatives, as we each reclaim our own soft rebellion. Hey, and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so glad that you are here. Are you still curiously wondering what this soft rebellion is all about? Well, there are as many definitions of the soft rebellion as there are women softly rebelling. The key to the soft rebellion is that it looks unique for each of us. It is so instinctual, and the closer we are to our instinctual knowing, the closer we are to our soft rebellion. It means giving ourselves permission to be our weird and unique self. The soft rebellion is the beginning of a magic journey and movement for me, for you, and for this podcast. And I'm so excited to be joined today by the woman who also midwifed the birth of the Soft Rebellion podcast. And together we started weaving a web of exploring what the soft rebellion means to us and how it often emerges through our so challenging and painful stories, which really are an invitation to lean into our calling and dreams. So today I'm joined by the one and only Sophie Jane Hardy. Sophie is a nature and cycle-inspired business coach, writer, and podcast host. Her happy place is walking along the Rivelin River, I hope I pronounced that right, in Sheffield in the UK, where she lives with her husband, son, and Frodo the dog. Her work has evolved over 15 years in the fields of not-for-profit communications, documentary filmmaking, women's leadership, and environmental activism. She is the host of the Red School Menstruality podcast and the creator of the Your Cyclical Business online program, helping purpose-led creatives and change makers to channel the wisdom of their menstrual cycles to create thriving business. So let's dive in. Welcome, Sophie Jane Hardy, on the Soft Rebellion podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm also incredibly excited, and it just feels so special to record this episode with you as the first guest on the Soft Rebellion podcast, which is my baby, but also with our baby, I want to say. Or you were a midwife. You were a midwife in the process of birthing the Soft Rebellion. And yeah, today when I was walking in the park and tuning into, dreaming into our conversation, I very much felt how, wow, the soft rebellion is very much its pure expression of that breathing body journey and process. It feels as if the breathing body shed its skin and as if the breathing body within that past year uncovered itself and out came and just a level deeper, I guess, of my authentic expression of, voicing other women's voice.
As you say that, I'm thinking of the insects and the creatures that they just naturally shed skins as they go. So when one skin gets a bit too small, they grow a new one underneath, and then they leave that one behind and move on into the next expression. Yeah.
Wow, and that's actually a wonderful, let's start there, because that is a wonderful metaphor or image you share, Sophie. And if we start at the place of, what does the soft rebellion mean for you and for me? It maybe exactly means on one level to allow ourselves to shed our skin over and over again when it feels right and ripe to do so.
I mean, I get the feeling from the conversations we've had about it that there are as many definitions of the soft rebellion as there are women who are softly rebelling. That it's like maybe part of the soft rebellion is that it looks unique for each of us, and that there isn't a cookie cutter mold that we follow. That it's I guess because it feels so instinctual, that when the closer we get to our own instinctual knowing, the closer we are to our own soft rebellion. What do you think?
Yes, I agree. For every woman, a very unique expression of the soft rebellion. And also, I want to say, in every day, in every moment, in different relationships and things we do, the soft rebellion will show itself with different needs and also different expressions. And, I'm actually really much thinking now back to that moment when the soft rebellion was born. And it was a moment of, you looked at me, I looked at you, and you asked the breathing body, does that still sit right? And without words, it was just a, no, I move on. And exactly in that moment, Sophie, that was the soft rebellion in me, to speak out, to just say, yes, I move on. I don't know yet how and why, but it doesn't feel right.
Yes, the skin was too small.
The skin was too small.
And you just knew there's a new skin. And I feel like a big part of the permission we all can give each other for the soft rebellion is it doesn't have to make sense. In a world where we're required to be able to be logical and rational and reasonable and have reasoned arguments for our decisions, and that's not the realm of the soft rebellion. The soft rebellion is I sense, I feel, I long, I yearn, and so I'm following it.
Yes, I think that is so important what you just said. It doesn't need to make sense. And we don't need to be able to understand it logically and rationally and to be able to intellectualize it, but to really, it doesn't need to make sense.
Which is really a rebellious act in our world, in our culture, especially the one that we're inhabiting, where I think, therefore I am, crafted a lot of what we're experiencing today. A lot of the philosophical and religious movements born from we think, therefore we are, Descartes. And I've always loved Eve Ensler, who wrote the Vagina Monologues, and now she's called V. She created V-Day. Incredible human. And she, in her book, In the Body of the World, which is absolutely a book about soft rebellion, and hopefully you can have her on the podcast one day, she says, how about we change this? I feel, therefore I am. I feel, therefore I am. And what would a whole philosophical culture look like that was born from that place instead of I think, therefore I am? I'm not a philosopher, but it feels right in my body when I hear I feel, therefore I am.
Yeah, I feel, I sense, and therefore I am. And I think that's so the beautiful thing about both your and my journey, how our journey really led us, and we'll talk much more about that, into the, or allowed us to emerge into the feminine. That was very much my journey, and we'll hear that that was yours too. And the feminine, right, is the poetic, the metaphorical, the storytelling, is the feeling, the sensation. And for me, the soft rebellion is very much, can I allow myself to stop running and chasing and arrive in that whole spectrum of sensing and feeling. And interestingly, when I was walking the park, I also felt, the soft rebellion, Sophie, that for me really means to open up again that huge box, and not bubble, that huge box or temple of dreams, which we women, we were born into, right? And really got ignited when we have our first menstruation, menarche. And can we in a soft rebellious way, can I really allow myself to, month by month, cycle by cycle, emerge into that temple of dreams, even if it doesn't make sense, even if I voice dreams which do not make sense.
100%. And I really feel like we can lean on indigenous wisdom here. Like, there are cultures who have long known that when women and people who bleed, when we menstruate, we have access to different kinds of consciousness which can really be of service to the collective. And so there have been dream lodges, particularly on Turtle Island in the North America. The indigenous folks there created dream lodges where women would go to dream for the collective, for the community, to receive visions for the community. You know, it's this is ancient and timeless. People have been doing this for a long time, and it's something that we can recall, I think, for us individually, but also for the collective.
Yes. Yeah, and that's, there are so many moving definitions of the soft rebellion. That's also soft rebellion, allowing or daring to kind of undo all these sticky strings of our today's society, and tap into indigenous wisdom and ancient wisdom, and allow that to move through us. Again, even if we do not understand it.
Yeah. I mean, a huge part of my soft rebellion over the past few years has been decolonizing, to seeing how much colonization was, how do I want to say this?
Decolonizing.
Yeah, how the legacy of colonization had shaped my mind and the way I see things, and the damage it continues to do in the world. So to understand how to decolonize my own mind and self, and then how to work as a being who is helping to decolonize the world. So that goes alongside the tuning into the indigenous wisdom, is how do we also create a world where indigenous wisdom is honored, where people of color are honored rather than hurt. So for me personally, that's been a huge part of my soft rebellion, is the more motherhood. Really, motherhood cracked my heart wide open and showed me that we all belong. So we all need to be working to create real inclusion for everybody who's marginalized. That's the main gift that motherhood gave, which is such an initiation into soft rebellion in itself, the whole process of motherhood, which we could speak about, but let's see.
That's part number 2. Wow.
But I'm curious, Florina, if you want to tell the story of how you came to the name Soft Rebellion.
It's interesting. I was also thinking about that today, and I actually can't recall what was the first moment when that word or term, when the soft rebellion came to me, sadly. But I just noticed, as I would, in the process of just journaling and writing, wherever, I'm in that process of birthing something new in the last couple of months. I've just been journaling and writing a lot. And suddenly I found myself over and over writing down that word soft rebellion, and I think it came a lot out of that question, which very much got sparked in our conversation. How can I come home or just come to a female body in a patriarchal world? That question somehow really sparked or activated, resonated something in me. And I think that does go back to my journey and story of my eating disorder, right? And in the end, the moment I could really let go was when I noticed, wow, this has to do with me, but it has equally to do with the society and the norms and the values I grew up in with. When I, right, and that's again the emerge in the feminine. So to answer your question, I think probably in the end, my own recovery journey was actually, that was my initial birth, or saying yes to the soft rebellion, to say, yes, society sees women as thin and super slim and always active and always exposing and always out there. And I softly rebelled to that.
Yes.
Because for me, then became that uncovery journey, the recovery journey became an uncovery journey of my sacred feminine, or of my feminine spirit. And I think that is what the soft rebellion for me is hugely about, to uncover or to give a voice to that which we women, as on our own, but also collectively, have hidden and pushed down for so many years. And that's why I love when you say decolonizing. Yes, it's the soft rebellion is an expression of me, but also, or I wish with that podcast to create or just feed into or nurture a movement, Sophie, that we also collectively can hold each other's space for that soft rebellion. I wished I would have had a soft rebellion, a soft rebellious woman circle in that moment, and I didn't have it had it for a long time.
It's so beautiful how our callings are often what life shows us we needed but didn't have, so then we create it for others. I find that really beautiful and fascinating, that process.
It's so fascinating, and that makes me think of, do you know Dr. Terry Trent?
Yes.
She has in her book, The Awakened Woman, that one question. She says, if you want to find out your calling, your great hunger, you don't need to ask yourself, what's your greatest dream? But ask yourself, what breaks your heart?
What a question.
Because that's what you're meant to go out and then change or facilitate in the world.
Yes.
And that for me is softly rebellious.
Beautiful question. Yeah.
And yeah, Sophie, I would love to listen to you now. And I would love to hear your story and journey, and particularly how has your body, because I know that has been a big channel vessel, how has your body guided you to live your calling and do the wonderful work you're doing today in this world, and take us back as many years as it needs to.
Yeah,
to take us on this journey.
The memory that I'm going back to first is actually when I was my first real engagement with my body in a conscious way, which was on a yoga teacher training. And I think it's the same for many of us. Yoga is such an incredible gateway. But I was studying yoga within what I now understand to be a very toxic, patriarchal school, which has since been called out a lot for abuse and sexual abuse, which is sadly the same for a lot of places. Interestingly, it was one run by white people. There weren't any Indian teachers there, so there's decolonization themes going on there too. But my body rebelled against what was happening there before my mind did. That's the way I understand what happened. So I'd been very intensively learning, really forcing my body into postures and into practices and bandhas and purification practices that were very harsh, too strong, and without good guidance. So, and I'm a fiery person. I really go for it when I go for things. So I was really going for it. And then they'd hired me as a teacher. So I was helping to run this yoga school in Chiang Mai in Thailand, which is such a wonderful part of the world. And I burnt myself out, basically. So at a certain point, my body just collapsed. And for a week, I couldn't get out of bed. I don't even remember being able to lift my arms. Like, all of the life drained out of me. I don't know exactly what it was. It could have been dengue fever. I'm not sure. Felt like life, my body just said, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. And that began what's become a lifelong quest since then, because this was 20 years ago. Wow, it's amazing. This was 20 years ago. I was propelled into the feminine because all of my teachers had been male. All the books I was reading were by men. And the spiritual path I've been following were made by men for men. That's the truth of it, because of the way our society has been for millennia, our cultures have been. And my body said, no, go find go find the feminine. And I began a quest that took me down all kinds of amazing routes, but which one to follow here now? Well, I'm thinking of someone who's become my teacher, Shamali Ardar from the Awakening Women Institute, who also has this quest. Okay, if the main spiritual paths in the world were created by men for men, how can women work with our own bodies to connect to that which is greater than us, to evolve, to and I've been on a wonderful ride with her over the past 15 years, guided by her. But along the way, my body kept showing me where I was off kilter through chronic illness. So it's similar to your process. I had a kind of long physical recovery process, and you had a long emotional, mental, spiritual recovery process. I mean, it's always on all levels, really, isn't it? But I had chronic pain and chronic fatigue, and I think it was I'm a very sensitive woman, a very sensitive person. I think Alexandra Pope from Red School often says that we are the canaries in the coal mine, the sensitive ones. Our bodies are showing the world what is out of whack, what is out of kilter. And my body was showing me what was up with the patriarchy and my own internalized patriarchy and the patriarchy outside, and showing me, okay, when you live like this, then you don't have pain. When you live like that, then you have pain. And I've just been guided. It's been a long and painful journey. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I've learned a huge amount about the feminine along the way, I'd say.
Wow. It's touching when you said forcing one's body. You were forcing your body in that yoga school, and right, it can happen through actually, whilst we do a physical practice or exercise. But I'm just thinking of all listeners and women listening, and how I'm sure that is something which resonates to so many of us. And for a long time, it can stay unconscious, right? I'm not sure how that was for you, but I'm thinking back to all those years where I was forcing my body, that vessel, which was waiting for us to discover but how unconsciously, I'm not quite sure that's the right word, we force that gateway, that doorway into, is it habits, or it doesn't matter if it's a posture or with food or whatever it is.
Well, I think it fundamentally comes from back to I think therefore I am. I can push and force and strategize my way to control and have what I want. that was the fundamental belief. You know, you can, through your willpower and your strength, you will get enlightened. And then the life that I live now is through relaxing and trusting and embracing the unknown and recognizing that I have very little control over anything. That's how I evolve, and that's how we all awaken together.
Yes.
You know, and chronic illness helped me with that. Infertility was a huge teacher for that. Motherhood has been the mother of all teachers, because I have no control over my little 3.5-year-old ball of chaos. And it's, I don't know why I'm with all the spiritual stuff today, but I'm thinking of in the Bible where it says man shall have dominion over the earth. And what has that created? Like when we look out at our earth, you know, this idea that we can control it. We create these monocultures, these vast acres of land that we've just growing one crop on, when we could have food forests that feed everybody. You know, it's incredible to see the damage that has come from these patriarchal structures and ways of thinking, which is why I'm so excited about the soft rebellion idea, because it's happening already all over the world. This is a new way to language it, but you know, when we each are able to follow our own natural impulses, natural being the key word, because we're aligning with life's intelligence rather than these human concepts that they're like borrowed clothes, you know, they're not ours. We have a natural innate connection to life, and when we live from that place, I mean, that feels like a powerful definition of the soft rebellion to me. You know, what do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I was just thinking there, isn't that exciting, Sophie? Exactly, control, right? Your story had lots to do with control, and mine to a point where I would have said I got an expert, a master in even controlling the control.
Wow.
And I'm thinking there with control, that immediately to me has a lot to do with always producing, always doing, always running, always chasing, and completely missing that moment of rest, of surrender. And isn't that interesting? In the end, the soft rebellion was really born in that past 2 or 3 weeks where I wasn't deadly ill, but I felt very ill. I was down. I was completely knocked out. I was so knocked out. And I think of the medicine woman and how my first kind of, let's say, the linear voice was saying, oh gosh, you're losing time. You're wasting time. You need to do things. These 3 weeks really made me aware of my drive to my deviation to toxic productivity and that high functioning anxiety, right? It was almost panic inducing, Sophie, of having to surrender to illness. But then in that process of just surrendering, I now see that process surrendering, also menstruation. It's like things are dropping away until there is just this golden thread or essence left. And if I now think back, wow, I was ill, and that applies to if you have, for instance, 2 weeks viral illness or whatever illness, disease, but I was being ill and I was forced to just let go. I had resistance to it, but I was forced to it, and I was held in that in many safe spaces, and out of it something amazing or something wonderful was just born so effortlessly, with so much ease, or it was such a, and I think, wow, how your journey of chronic illness and mine, how that healing is an unshedding in itself. And that's the soft rebellion.
It's the winter. It feels like you're speaking to the process of inner wintering in a world that really demands that we are in an eternal summer state. And what I mean by that is that we're on all the time, back to the reasonable, rational, the logical, that, you know, we're consistent, we show up, and nothing in nature is like that. But we humans think that we need to be, we've created these cultures, modern cultures, where we think we need to be. And I'm thinking of the river that I walk down every day. When it rains a lot, there's loads of water rushing down the river. And then when it doesn't rain so much, it's just very slowly trickling. Like, that's what life does. When there's a lot of energy and momentum, it really flows. And when there isn't so much, it rests back. And a huge part of the soft rebellion for me is letting myself be myself, letting myself follow my own rhythms, however they're unfolding. And the particular way I do that is through practicing menstrual cycle awareness, which I know you're madly passionate about, alongside me, that my body is going through, often 28 days, but around there, a process of building up to the peak moment of ovulation and then fading away to the down, like the inner winter moment of menstruation. And that when I let myself be a different woman each of those 28 days, then I'm closer to myself, closer to my truth. I'm not trying to bend myself out of shape. And it creates so much more ease, and that effortlessness that you were speaking about then, when you had to surrender to the illness. And then this wonderful creative idea, who knows where this is going to go, the soft rebellion. This is the beginning of something so magical and generative and beautiful in the world. And it came from that place of yielding and letting go, softening, receiving life instead of controlling life.
I'm just taking a little pause from the conversation with Sophie to share something with you. So that whole soft rebellion movement, it's not that I'm not starting the soft rebellion, but really I'm aligning to an existing momentum which has found a new language through me. And I invite women and I invite you to align with that momentum and with me and find your own way of it. And I would love to hear from you. What does the term soft rebellion mean to you? What is your personal soft rebellion, and what are you rebelling against, respectively rebelling for? And how has your body guided you to live your calling and to meet your soft rebellion? I'm looking forward to hear from you, especially now as we are in the very beginning of this project of the Soft Rebellion. You can email me at softrebellion@florinatali.com, or you can find me on Instagram, florina.tali, and tag me in any story or post. I'm very much looking forward reading and being in conversation with you. So let us go back to the conversation with Sophie. I would love to dive a little bit deeper in there and hear more. Maybe that's the moment where you take us back onto your journey and where and how did you discover menstrual cycle awareness, and tell us more. How do you live your soft rebellion through that? I think a wonderful question where you kind of ended or arrived when you took us onto your journey was, right, how can women, you started to find ways, how can women connect to their own body to access that what is greater than us, and that has all to do with menstrual cycle awareness. So take us back. How did you do that? What did you explore?
So much. It's been amazing. I've been so blessed to have wonderful teachers. And how exciting that we live in a world where this quest is really vividly alive. So many of us are like on the scent of the feminine, you could say, on the trail of the feminine. So two things come to mind. I was, as many of us experience, I'm laughing, it wasn't funny. I was having a really hard time in my premenstrual phase of my cycle. I didn't know that. I just knew that life felt really hard sometimes, and I felt depressed and anxious and full of rage, especially towards men. I didn't have many men in my life. I just had one man, so he got the full force of my rage.
The full package.
And I don't know how I discovered it, but I discovered Alexandra Pope's one of her first books called The Woman Quest. And it's a 13-month journey to track your menstrual cycle. So I think my instinct and my intuition led me there. So, you know, props to instinct and intuition and following them where we can.
Yes.
And through tracking my cycle, my menstrual cycle, and by tracking, I mean looking at how my energy was each day, looking at my mood, what my dreams were like, my sexual energy, the general tone and feeling of how the day was, and also what I felt like I was needing. So I started tracking that, and it became so apparent even after 2 or 3 months, and I think a lot of people have this when they first start practicing menstrual cycle awareness, that it was around day 22, 23, 24 that I would have a peak challenging time, rage, shouting, hating everyone, hating myself, self-doubt, crippling self-doubt, anxiety. It was really messing with my work. I was working as a filmmaker at the time, which was a very free-flowing job, which was wonderful, but I just couldn't really function. You know, looking back, maybe it was PMDD, I'm not sure, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, but anyway, life was really rough. And through this book with Alexandra Pope, I was reading about the inner critic and how the inner autumn, the premenstrual phase, is the home of our inner critic. And when we can create a different kind of relationship with that part of us, then we can free up the powers of the premenstrual phase, which are like greater discernment, a clarity about our needs, and a capacity to express our needs and to claim what we need, to a kind of capacity to sit a bit deeper in our authority. Sovereignty is a word that's coming to me right now. So it was a very, very empowering process, and it helped me to make sense of something that was so just confounding and difficult. And I wish it for everyone who menstruates, like for them to be able to track their cycle, understand, oh, there's a rhythm to this, you know, what can feel like madness. I'm putting that in quotation marks. And that was huge for me because it also helped me to find more contained, generative ways to unleash this rage that was very like bound up in my body from this experience in the yoga school, but from previous abusive experiences with men, you know, that had created these patterns of rage and shutdown in me. And I'm sure I can only speak from personal experience. I know there are lots of things that contribute to things like chronic pain and chronic fatigue. It's a very complex, multifactorial picture. But for me, being able to have a more intimate relationship with that rage and find ways to express it was key to health for me, was key to vitality. Because while I was sitting on that volcano of rage, I mean, it takes a lot of energy to suppress that much rage.
Yes.
So I did a lot of winding down the car window and just yelling, you know, loads of that, standing on the top of mountains and yelling, standing in front of wild oceans and yelling. And that was a very fruitful part of that time. I mean, there's loads of places we could go. Do you have any questions from there?
Yeah, I just see yourself screaming or yelling from the car, and then from the mountain. Think, oh, how wonderful! And that is also an image of the soft rebellion I have. That we women who got suppressed for so many years, and I mean, even as a child, right? We all have these memories of acting mad or perceived as acting mad and being told to shut up, when actually no, there were just feelings which need expressing. And I think now to you and to my story, how can body heal? Where should she take the energy or the resources from if she takes so much energy to hold tight these unexpressed feelings? Diana Richardson defines emotions as unexpressed feelings, and it's so simple, and it's so true.
And so imagine once that is unleashed, what we can do together, which takes me to the next part of my story, if that's okay.
Yes, please. I'd love to hear that.
So as I encountered the feminine more, or received the feminine, open, surrendered to the feminine, entered this mystery, and I was reading Clarissa Pinkola Estes, The Women Who Run with the Wolves, Tammy Lynn Kent, The Wild Feminine Work, which is an incredible body of work. So, we're standing on the shoulders of giants here. But I wanted to do something with this unlocked energy. And I was lucky to discover this organization called Tree Sisters, who it was just a couple of people at the time, and I began to volunteer, and our mission was to reforest the tropics through the collective creativity and courage of women. And I became our social media person, and we grew an audience of 250,000 people, and we launched this Million Trees campaign, and we gathered thousands and thousands of women, and we planted 1 million trees. And to this day, it feels like one of the most exciting parts of the legacy I'm leaving is to know that those 1 million trees are in the ground. And it came from my illness forcing me to stop and feel. And then from that feeling place, knowing I needed to follow my instinct and my intuition.
Yes.
Yeah. And that really was the birthplace of where I am now as a business coach and a communications consultant, is everything I learned being with those thousands of women, I'm now translating into supporting, coaches, therapists, healers, artists, incredible women and people to unleash that energy, to connect with their calling, and then to stream it into these businesses, which can act as sort of portals or vessels for who they are and what they're here to do, in a way that can really resource them and sustain them, so that they can have the impact that they're here to have. With Tree Sisters, I got to see what we're capable of when we free up the energy and when we get together and collaborate. And it showed me, it laid down a template in me for how we can turn things around in this world, because we're in trouble. I believe. Yes. I mean, we're in trouble right now. We need to turn this. We need to turn this tanker around. And I feel like the soft rebellion is vital to kind of giving us the nourishment we need to be able to play our own. We each have a role to play, but we need to be nourished in order to play that role.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad that, what did you say? Yeah, how we can and how can we turn things around in this world. And I think I love the what you all did with the Tree Sisters. And I think what I hear or see there, and what I find so inspiring is, on one level, yes, it starts with ourselves, right? The first thing is to inhibit, to stop, to rest for ourselves. But then, and with that, we tap into something which, to go back to the first question, I think with simply that stopping, that resting and turning inwards, we actually, of course, we attend to our body. And I feel just by actually acknowledging and attending, I feel that we access that what is higher than our thinking intelligence. And by that, if we all do that, I feel we all nurture a pond with a huge ocean with qualities which the world needs. And I also think that if we all do that, it kind of awakens a certain, Sophie, I want to say, boldness and just kind of raw and rough decision takingness, because our bodies aren't always just sweet. And I have this practice, dear body, what do you want me to know today? And I would write that in the morning, and oh my dear, body is like really it's not always a sweet, poetic sugar coated letter. It's like, bam, go and call her, say no, you can't do this. It's like, oh, and I get goosebumps now. She is so, for me the word bold is actually really
audacious.
Raw.
The audacity.
Yes.
And
imagine, Sophie, if we all bring from a very soft and feminine through a very soft and feminine lens, but now I want to say soft strength, soft clarity. I think the soft rebellion is that part in us which brings crystal clarity with no excuses if it's not actually needed.
Yeah.
But from such a full-hearted place, and that's what the world needs.
It's that quiet knowing. It's not necessarily the like
knowing,
clenched fist, rebellious activism. And there is very much a place for that in our world. It's that the quiet, still small voice within that is knows a lot. Yeah, that you're connecting to with that beautiful practice. I love that. And do you know what I was thinking of when you were talking? I was thinking of our microbiome. For some reason, this profound intelligence that is within our bodies that we're only really just uncovering with the latest science around how much communication is going on, what trauma really is and what pain really is. And there's so much we're learning, but that our microbiomes, because of all the ways that we live and the environmental toxins and antibiotics and all that, they're kind of becoming monocultures in themselves. I'm thinking of our gut microbiome.
Yes.
But when each of us, I don't know if this analogy is going to work, but let's just run with it for a little bit longer.
Go for it.
That when each of us is able to rest back fully into the audacious expression of who we actually are, life becomes much more colourful, much more diverse, much more interesting. Just like how we need to be eating lots of colourful vegetables and living a more restful life in order for our gut microbiome to thrive. It's like our collective can thrive when each of us is embracing our fullness, whatever that looks like. And it looks so weird and different for each of us. But we're bred to fit in, or there's a society, there's a biological drive to fit into, of course, a survival drive. But I think a big part of this soft rebellion is giving ourselves permission to be our weird, unique selves.
Yes. I actually like the picture of microbiome because, it's right. The microbiome changes everything in us depending how it is, but it also changes everything outside of us because it's so much changes. It's because it's so linkly tied to our mood, to literally the wiring in our brains, right? And to therefore how we actually then structure that voice and bring that into. It's actually a beautiful metaphor.
Good. I'm glad that one worked because I was a bit worried back there going, I'm not sure if this one's going anywhere.
And Sophie, I would love, maybe that's the last theme to explore. So here you are 20 years later, having said yes to that journey you went through. And I'm sure there were many no's along the ways you had to speak out. And here you are, and you're doing such a precious work in the world, supporting women and people in their business, and I prefer the word project, in the birthing of their projects.
We could explore that. Yes. Yeah. I know what you mean, because business has so many connotations for sure. Yeah. Soul work, your soul work.
Yeah. And right, the beautiful thing is I've witnessed and lived that with you on my side, how it can look like if we birth a project very much in tune with our cycle.
Yes.
And with our cyclical nature. It was actually working with you when I for the first time noticed that concept, right? How we live cycles within cycles, for example. How the project might be in spring, but I'm in winter, and there is tension and cheer. And yeah, maybe tell us a little bit more about what does that mean? Cyclical business.
Yeah.
What do you do with these women?
Yeah, what do we do? It might be handy to go in through the lens of my story again, to ground it.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I'd had this premenstrual revelation, And then following the work of Alexandra and Shani at Red School, I really started to learn about how we can work with the menstruation phase to really connect to our calling and receive messages and guidance from our calling. And I began to see that really our menstrual cycles and connecting to our cyclical nature can actually be an incredible life coach, an incredible guide, and our own tailor-made personal guide. You know, we're receiving intelligence if we're tuning into it all the way through the month about what we need to thrive, about how to set up our lives in a way that is good, generative for us and those around us. So to extend that, I began to see that the menstrual cycle can also be our best business coach. If the business that we're running is a vehicle for, is purpose-led, if it's a vehicle for our calling, if it's a vehicle for our soul work, then it's a big and tricky path, taking the longings and the visions and the dreams that you have inside and then finding a way to make them manifest in the world so that you can reach the people that you can most serve and have the impact that you want. And then to bring in the word business, there's a whole other element when we're looking to how we can make a sustainable income from that process so that we're resourced to be able to keep doing the good work that we're here to do inside a capitalist structure. You know, when so many of us, that was a funny Freudian slip. So many of us have money blocks, have a kind of thwarted,
unhelpful money beliefs,
exactly, unhelpful money beliefs. Beautifully said. So I left Tree Sisters because I wanted to have a baby, and Tree Sisters was wonderful, but it was really big what we were trying to do, and I was stressed and stretched by it. And I had been trying to get pregnant for a couple of years and it wasn't happening. So, guided by my cycle, I decided to take everything out of my life that was stressful. It was kind of a strange decision because then I started my own business, which is an inherently stressful thing to do. But at least I was running it on my own terms and I could follow my own cycles. And I started to coach and guide women, change makers and creatives, and as we've spoken about. And as I was looking for the kind of ways to express what I had seen to be successful, I came back round again and again to the menstrual cycle. This is the best business coach. This is the way that you can receive the intelligence and the wisdom that's going to help you to run your business. And it led to me creating Your Cyclical Business, which is a program that guides purpose-led business leaders on a journey around the 4 inner seasons of the menstrual cycle: inner spring at pre-ovulation, inner summer at ovulation, inner autumn in the premenstruum, and inner winter at menstruation, to see how we can take care of ourselves in each of those phases, and how that self-care can awaken powers in each of these seasons, and how to use those powers as business leaders. So one example is back to the premenstruum. Used to be my nemesis. Now I feel so beautifully, blessedly at home in this phase of my cycle. Running a business requires so much discernment. You mentioned it earlier. There are lots of no's that we have to say. And the inner autumn, this natural fire that can arise in the inner autumn that can be turned in on ourselves or turned out against others in the world in this very critical way, which is sometimes needed. I don't know if my husband appreciates how much critical energy comes his way, but that we can harness that discernment, and we can, again, like I mentioned earlier, sit back into the authority and lead from a place of gravitas and make difficult decisions guided by that energy. So that's one example of one of the superpowers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, what really touches me, Sophie, is, and I'm doing it and heard it, but it's so good to hear it again in different words. But what you just said, how really, I never know, is it cyclical or cyclical?
I say cyclical, but we're really making up a new language here, so you can call it whatever you like.
Yeah. How cyclical, I do cycle all the time, it's a cyclical business. How, when you said how self-care, how cyclical business really means how self-care can awaken powers.
Yeah.
And I think that is such a powerful statement, Sophie. How, oops, lost it there, but you're back. And that brings us back to the very start, right? I feel that in itself is actually the soft rebellion. She who allows the self-care, that what everyone says, oh, you don't have time and how can you go on, keep doing, keep producing. No, she allows self-care to become that vessel through which to awaken her power.
Yeah, in service to that which is greater than us, in service to the calling that, as Tererai Trent says, that whatever breaks our heart, we unleash those powers in service to that. It creates this beautiful virtuous circle. It's so generative. Yeah. Oh, I had a thought there, but it's left my mind.
I've just lost you there, Sophie. But I'm sure you said it gave a wonderful response to my to my warmly welcomed insight.
I'm trying to remember what I said so that I can repeat it back to you.
All good. It will be recorded.
It's the self-care. The self-care awakens our powers.
The self-care which awakens the powers.
I was saying it's and then those powers are in service to that which is greater than us. They're in service to that which is breaking our hearts.
Yes.
Yeah, they're in service to that calling that's speaking to us.
Yes.
Which is moving towards a collective experience which is more harmonious and beautiful and generative on earth.
Absolutely. And that for me is what menstrual cycle awareness is about. Self-care. And there is so much clarity, crystalness in self-care.
Yeah, there really is. And it can be really practical too. I feel that often we think self-care is like we have to go to a spa or have a bubble bath or but I think it can happen in these micro moments. Alexandra and Charlie speak about the 1% rule, the 1%. So if you know there's something that you're needing, if your inner autumn is telling you, I need more space. Okay, how can you get 5 minutes more space today or 10 minutes? And that, as you follow those impulses more, the 1% becomes the 5%, becomes the 20%. But we can just start with these little micro moves in our lives, little course corrections that keep us pointing true north. Just keep adjusting all the time inside the constraints of our life, all the responsibilities we have to keep us moving in the direction of our instinctual knowing is taking us.
Yeah, absolutely. Interestingly, I was thinking about the 1% rule, the 1% thing there too in that moment. Yeah. And maybe I finish with that it's wonderful. Just another example of how could that look like. I was chatting to a mom, and for her the other day, she was in her autumn, and the 1% looked like that they were eating dinner, and she just said, "Family, you talk, I'll be silent."
Beautiful.
And that was such a wonderful, exactly, it doesn't need a bubble bath and going to the movies. Yeah. But I was like, wow, that's so deep.
Yes.
And that was her soft rebellion there.
I love that. I did go to the movies 2 nights ago. It was amazing.
What did you see, Sophie?
I saw Inside Out 2. So the first one was about a little girl and her emotions, and it was such an intelligent film, for kids. And now she's a teenager, and I really anxiety is a core theme, and I really related to it. So I really recommend it to everybody. Inside Out too. That was my self-care.
Inside
that
Out
was my 50%. It wasn't just the 1%.
That is wonderful, and that now makes me think of that wonderful practice, because that's also the soft rebellion called, the artist way, the artist state.
Yes, it was my artist state. Totally.
That was your artist state. I saw you there going with your little inner artist to your date and watching
popcorn.
Good, but also playful. Yes. Sophie, thank you so much for sharing, for exploring with me, and for sharing from your story and experience. And
thank you for such a great conversation. I enjoyed it so much. This is what I love speaking about, and it was a real pleasure to be with you.
And maybe just tell us how, for all the listeners and women who are drawn to explore more about the cyclical business, I will put into the show notes, but it's always nice to hear directly, how can people reach out to you and to the cyclical business course?
Oh, thanks, Florina. Yeah, it's the course is at yourcyclicalbusiness.com, and it's going to become a self-paced course soon. Which it has a live element too, but you can find out all about it at yourcyclicalbusiness.com. And I'm mostly on Instagram, not loads, but I will be more and more. Sophie.jane.hardy on Instagram.
I will put that all into the show notes. Is there any last word, sentence, thing you would like to share?
Just that I'm so excited about this soft rebellion, and I'm so delighted to feel how it's emerging through you, and I'm just watching with joy to see how it unfolds and what it becomes. And I'll be right there with my hands at your back. I think it's beautiful what you're doing.
Thank you, Sophie, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, love. Mwah. See you soon.
Thank you, Sophie, for being with us, and thank you, dear listeners, for being with us and me too. By sharing these conversations with you, I'm leaning into my calling, my own soft rebellion, and it's such a blessing to be creating a platform of resources and inspirations to come home to the creative power of our female body. I would love to hear your takeaways and how this conversation was for you. You can always tag me on social media at florina.tali, or you can write to me softrebellion@florinatali.com. I'd love to hear from you, and also who you would like me to be talking to, what topics you would like to be explored. I really want this to be a conversation. And if you know anyone, if you have a friend, a sister, circles, if you know someone you think, ooh, she might be really benefit or harvest something from this today's episode, then do forward this episode to them. And if you enjoy this episode, the podcast, then leave a review and give me a follow. This helps me hugely to spread the soft rebellion movement in and with the world. I'll be with you next week, and until then, go and be your unique, weird, wonderful self. Lots of love, Florina.